Hello everyone, Vincent Teo from HZ2000 Test here. I hold in my hand the results of our 2020 TV Shootout done in conjunction with UK electrical retailer Panasonic, and I would like to announce the results in this video, including the individual category scores which we judged on the day. And before you ask why I'm dressed in this manner, the reason is because this is probably the only occasion where I get to put on a black tie suit. I usually like to refresh my skills of tying a self-tie black tie at least once a year. Otherwise, I'll forget how to do it, and then I have to go on YouTube to look up some tutorial looking at some other blokes' neck and chin. Not really my cup of tea. But before I proceed with the results, I would like to thank a couple of parties for making this shootout event a success, well, a relative success in these really unusual and difficult circumstances. Because of the pandemic, obviously, we couldn't invite the public around to score these TVs, to look at these TVs in reference to the mastering monitor. And also, even inviting professionals from abroad around, trying to fly them in, is impossible due to the travel restrictions everywhere. So in the end, it was only myself who judged and assigned scores to these TVs to arrive at the results. But I think, the team at Panasonic Leeds, including store manager David Connor, has done an extremely good job of sourcing these TVs, putting them up, and then masking them. Yes, this year, just like last year, all these TVs are masked so that I didn't know which TV was which when I was actually judging them, when I was assigning the scores based on different footage that was displayed on screen. So as you can see here, David and his team, used gaffer tape or whatever, mask all the bezel, put these TVs up on a rollable stand, and then put them together. And genuinely, when I walked into the room on shootout day, I didn't know which TV was which. And it is actually quite surreal. And now I actually fully understand how some of you who attended last year's shootout felt, not knowing which TV is which. Let's say for one category, you think that this TV may be this brand, but the next category come along and your expectations are all shattered, because everything changed. And I specifically made sure to ask David to put on clips that are extremely difficult for me to pinpoint or identify which TV is which. So let's say I asked him to put on upscaling and also color accuracy clips where the performance of the sets were extremely close, and it is nearly impossible for me to tell which TV was which while I was actually judging the footage and assigning the scores. So thanks again to the team at Panasonic Leeds, including store manager David Connor, for putting on this event, for his hard work, sourcing these TVs and arranging them, masking them, for the success of this event so that the results are as unbiased as possible. So if you are thinking about buying a new TV, even if it's not one of these 5 televisions, I forgot to mention these televisions, but let me just finish my plug for them first. So if you are thinking about buying any TV, even if it's not any of these 5 TVs, I would appreciate it if you could support this channel and support Panasonic, who has been so generous and so kind to this channel, by considering buying from them. Call 0113 244 6607. Mention HZ2000 Test and you will receive great price and service. Again, I thank you in advance for your support for them, who have been supportive of this channel and put on this shootout event. So with this in mind, another party that I would like to thank would be CYP Europe, who have been kind enough to loan us an 8-way HDMI splitter and also some high quality HDMI cables for this event to run successfully. Now, obviously there were 5 TVs at the event, but we also had a Sony BVM-X300 true RGB mastering monitor on set, which allowed me to judge various parameters of picture quality against a reference. So let's say when I was judging black level and shadow detail, I could always refer to the Sony BVM-X300 to see whether the shadow detail is actually too bright, or too dark. And when I was judging color accuracy, again, I constantly referred to the Sony BVM-X300. And with this in mind, let's move on to try and announce the results. Otherwise, we'll never reach the end of this video with me rambling on and on off the cuff. And the first category would be blacks and shadow detail. And to judge this category, before I forget, all these TVs, I calibrated them beforehand, before the shootout day, and we had to accelerate things a bit because of the pending lockdown last week. So I went into the store and adopted various social distancing and also put a mask on to calibrate these TVs. As you can probably see from some time-lapse footage, playing on these TVs behind me. And with that in mind, these TVs are all calibrated and there's a mastering monitor. So let's get into the individual categories. The first one would be blacks and shadow detail. And to judge this category, I used this scene from The Darkest Hour. This is the 4K Blu-ray version. So this will be playing in HDR. And here we can see Churchill sitting in a chair with a brolly, smoking, and there are faint pinstripes on his suit. And by looking at the reference broadcast monitor, we can tell, how good or how far off a TV is with reference to black level and also shadow detail presentation. And in first place, the winner was the Panasonic HZ2000 with 5 points, and the other three OLEDs, took joint second place with 4.5 points, because I think, when they come out black, some of them are too dark, some of them are too bright, and only the Panasonic HZ2000 I felt matched the Sony X300 mastering monitor the closest. The next category is color accuracy, and for this category, I put on the scene from Kingsman containing various faces for judging skin tones and also various clothings in different colors. And I constantly darted my eyes between the mastering monitor and the individual sets to assign individual scores. And remember that at the time when I was judging these TVs and while I was actually allocating scores, I didn't know which TV was which, but it just happened that I couldn't tell the difference between the LG CX, the Panasonic HZ2000, and also the Sony A8 after calibration. They were so close and I couldn't actually see any difference whatsoever. So I gave all of them 5 points. And in the second spot comes the Philips 935 with 4 points. And the next category is HDR tone mapping, and I wanted to use some challenging scenes from 1000 nit and also 4000 nit content for this category. And for the 1000 nit scene, we used this sequence from The Darkest Hour, where there's really bright sunlight shining through these curtains, these windows, and I'm trying to see the detail in between. And for the 4000 nit content, I used this footage from the Mac. Now the Mac is available in Dolby Vision, but I made sure to force my Oppo 203 4K Blu-ray player to output HDR10 so that the Samsung Q90T can join in the act as well. And we wanted to judge basically HDR10 tone mapping. And we are seeing just how clear the cage is against this spot of bright sunlight that is shining through the water. And in first place was the Panasonic HZ2000 with 5 points. It has a custom professional OLED panel, which is capable of higher peak brightness than all the other OLEDs. So this allowed the highlight detail to be expressed in a clearer and more impactful fashion. And in second place came the Samsung Q90T, which also has high peak brightness, but because of its undefeatable dynamic tone mapping, sometimes it was too bright and it was actually clipping a bit more highlight detail than the Panasonic HZ2000, which is why it came second with 4 points. The next category is motion performance, and for this category, I judged 2 subcategories, namely 24Hz motion. I displayed a slow panning shot from The Martian, and 50Hz motion, where I watched some football recorded from maybe a couple of years ago. Those were the good times. And basically, when I watched the football, I was checking for motion interpolation artifacts and also whether the BFI was too dim. So for this category, I switched on BFI and engaged motion interpolation in an optimal manner on all these sets. So I had to judge and balance between, say, the improved motion clarity versus the amount of interpolation artifacts that was introduced. And in first place was the Sony A8 with 4.5 points, and the Panasonic HZ2000 and the Samsung Q90T were joint second with 4 points each. The next category is video processing, and this is again divided into 3 subcategories. The first one is upscaling. I used the standard definition content from ITV SD, and the second subcategory is gradation, and I checked this using The Martian, and I'm looking at the gradients in the sky, whether it is stair-stepped or it is smooth. And the third subcategory is compression handling, and for this subcategory I used this bit-stuffed Game of Thrones clip which has a tendency to throw up various flickering or macro blocking artifacts on the OLEDs. So in first place was the Samsung Q90T with 4.67 points. Now the thing is, when I'm assigning all these scores, I'm very conscious to try and separate only the attribute I'm actually judging against, maybe some other attributes which may have influenced the scores in previous years when the public was actually assigning these scores. So let's say I know some people, when they look at an LED LCD, when they look at QLED, they immediately think that the picture doesn't look that good, and so the video processing score would be marked down as well, even though in my opinion the Samsung Q90T had the best compression handling, because LCD inherently is just able to handle all these near blacks in a smoother and less artifact ridden fashion than the OLEDs. So in first place was the Samsung Q90T with 4.67 points, and in joint second place were the Panasonic HZ2000 and Sony A8 with 4 points. And the next category is uniformity, and this I divided into dark uniformity and bright uniformity. For dark uniformity, I used this slow panning shot from Star Trek Beyond across a dark gray background, trying to check for any bending, any dirty screen effect, or any backlight bleeding. And for the bright uniformity, I basically just looked at the football clip earlier to see whether I could spot any dirty screen effect or DSE or obvious bending. And the winners in this category are the Panasonic HZ2000 and also the Sony A8 with 5 points, and in second place came the LG CX or C10 with 4.5 points. The next category is bright room performance, and needless to say, I think the Samsung Q90T took first place here with the full 5 points. I divided this into 2 subcategories, namely light output and also anti-reflection handling, and the Samsung Q90T was the best in these 2 subcategories, so it took home the full 5 points. And in joint second place were the Panasonic HZ2000, the Philips 935, and the LG CX or C10 OLED. And the last category would be for gaming, and in this category I judged the input lag in one subcategory and the picture quality in game mode in the second category. And The winner was the LG CX with 4.5 points, and the runner-up was the Samsung Q90T with 4 points. So with those individual categories out of the way, let's move on to the awards. And the first award is the Best Home Cinema TV Award. And for this award, I wanted to reward a TV that does best in a dark room, fed with pristine content for critical viewing. And I think, we added up the scores for blacks and shadow detail, color accuracy, HDR tone mapping, 24Hz motion, and also dark uniformity. And eventually, after adding up all these scores, the one with the highest score was the Panasonic HZ2000 with 24 points. So it is the best home cinema TV for 2020. And in the runner-up spot was the Sony A8 with 21.5 points. The next award is for the best living room TV. And for this award, I wanted to try and select a TV that does best in a brighter environment with less pristine content, with more compressed content. So I added up the scores for bright room performance, for bright uniformity, because in a brighter environment, you're more likely to watch sports content, and bright uniformity is very important. A clean bright uniformity is very important. And I also add up the scores for video processing and also 50Hz motion, again because of sports. And the highest score was obtained by the Sony A8 with 17.5 points. So it is the winner of our Best Living Room TV Award for 2020. And in second place was the Panasonic HZ2000 with 17 points. And with gaming being such a central aspect this year, especially with the next-gen consoles coming around, or maybe even launched already, the best gaming TV went to the LG CX with 4.5 points, and the Samsung Q90T was a close second with 4 points. And after totaling up all these scores, we arrive at the best TV of 2020. Basically, the TV which does best overall in all these categories. It obtained the highest score overall. And the best TV of 2020, I can announce, is the Panasonic HZ2000 with 35 points. And in second place was the Sony A8 with 32.5 points. So many congratulations to Panasonic for taking home our Best TV of 2020 award. And I think their investment, their belief in their custom professional OLED panel has paid off. Basically, if you haven't watched my review of the Panasonic HZ2000 or even last year's GZ2000, what this custom professional panel does is basically additional cooling or a really large heatsink to dissipate heat from the OLED panel, and this allows the Panasonic HZ2000 and also last year's GZ2000 to achieve even higher peak brightness and with less ABL or automatic brightness limiter than other competing OLED TVs on the market from any other brands. So with this higher peak brightness, HDR will look punchier and specular highlight detail can be expressed in a clearer manner. And the other advantage of the Panasonic HZ2000 is at the darker end of the picture as well. Among all the OLEDs on the market, I have always felt that they handle near black the best in terms of how they actually come out of black, in terms of the shadow detail presentation, and how they are so effective in suppressing near black chrominance overshoot more so than any other manufacturer on the market. And last but not least, let's not forget about their color accuracy as well. Now remember, in the color accuracy category, I assigned the same scores to the LG CX, the Panasonic HZ2000, and also the Sony A8. But that is after calibration. I think, I couldn't genuinely tell between them with reference to the broadcast monitor after calibration. But let's say out of the box, I think the Panasonic is still the most accurate out of the box. So many congratulations to Panasonic again. And that is basically a wrap for me. It was hard work for me calibrating and then judging these TVs, and it was hard work for Compare More, putting all these resources, sourcing these TVs from their stock, and assembling and setting up these TVs for me to go in and calibrate and also judge these TVs. So again, a big thanks to them. So I think I hope you genuinely find this video useful, and I sincerely hope that next year the situation would improve, that we can gather around in public again and try to watch these TVs together against a reference broadcast monitor. So maybe the TV shootout of 2021 will be less lonely for me. If you like to watch some of our technical TV reviews, I've created a playlist here. Or if you like to watch some of our technical TV comparisons, I've compiled another playlist here if you like to click on it. And I will see you in the next video.